Too soft. Too weak. He poked Do-hyun's chest with one of his fingers. How long will you last, I wonder? 1 week, 2? The 3 months passed in the labor pits. The days were all the same. Wake up, work, eat, sleep, repeat. The orange lights never changed. There was no sun, no moon. No way to know if it was day or night on the surface above. Time became meaningless. Many prisoners died during those 3 months. Some died from the hard work. Some died from sickness. Some died because the guards killed them for moving too slow. Every few days, new prisoners would arrive to replace the dead ones. The cycle never stopped. But Kim Do-hyun did not die. He worked every day without complaint. He ate the terrible food they gave him without making a face. He slept when they told him to sleep and woke when they told him to wake. To the guards, he was the perfect prisoner. No trouble. No problems. Just a quiet human who did what he was told. But Bora knew better. She had been watching Do-hyun for 3 months now. At first, she thought maybe she was wrong about him. Maybe he really was just a broken man who had given up on life. But then she started noticing little things. She noticed how Do-hyun always chose to work in different areas of the mine. Every week, he would find a way to move to a new section. At first, Bora thought this was random. But then she realized he was mapping the entire underground complex. He was learning every tunnel, every door, every corner. She noticed how Do-hyun watched the guards. Not with fear like the other prisoners. He watched them the way a hunter watches prey. He tracked their movements. He learned their routines. He knew which guards were cruel and which ones were lazy. He knew when they changed shifts. He knew everything about them. She noticed how Do-hyun counted things. He counted steps. He counted seconds. He counted the time between guard patrols. He counted how long the elevator took to go up and down. He counted how many prisoners were in each section. He was building a picture in his mind, a complete map of everything that happened in the labor pits. And she noticed that Do-hyun never truly slept. Every night, when the lights dimmed and the prisoners lay down to rest, Bora would look over at Do-hyun. He would be sitting against the wall with his eyes closed. But he was not sleeping. She could tell by the way he breathed, by the small movements of his eyes behind his closed lids. He was thinking, planning, waiting. One night, Bora could not stop herself anymore. She had to know. She crawled over to where Do-hyun sat. The other prisoners around them were asleep, their breathing slow and heavy. The guards were far away, at the main entrance to the sleeping area. It was as private as they could get. "I know you are awake," Bora whispered. Do-hyun did not open his eyes, but his breathing changed slightly. He was listening. "I've been watching you," Bora continued, "for 3 months. I know what you are doing." Still no response. "You are mapping this place. You are learning the guard patterns. You are planning something." She paused. "I want to help." For a long moment, nothing happened. Then Do-hyun opened his eyes. In the dim light, Bora could see something in them. Not fear, not hope. Something harder. Something colder. "Why?" he asked Dot. It was the first word she had ever heard him speak. His voice was rough from 3 months of silence, but it was calm, controlled. "Because I want to leave this place," Bora said. "I've been here for 2 years. I have seen many prisoners try to escape. They all failed. They all died. But you are different. You do not rush. You do not panic. You plan." Do-hyun studied her face for a long moment. "What were you before they captured you?" he asked. "A scientist. I worked on computer systems, programming, network security." She laughed quietly, but there was no humor in it. "The Krath destroyed my home world because we had technology they wanted. They killed everyone I knew. They brought me here because they thought I might be useful, but I refused to help them. So they sent me to the mines. Dawn nodded slowly. A computer scientist. That could be very useful. How many guards are there in Section 7 at night? He asked. Bora was surprised by the question. Section 7? The storage area? Yes, she thought for a moment. 2 guards. They patrol every 30 minutes. But the cameras there are old. They have blind spots near the east wall. Dahyun nodded again. He had not known about the camera blind spots. This was new information. You know a lot, he said. I watched too, Bora replied. Just like you. I have been waiting for someone who could do something with what I know. They sat in silence for a while. Around them, prisoners shifted in their sleep. Someone coughed. Someone moaned from a nightmare. The labor pits were never truly quiet. There are others, Do-yoon said finally. Other prisoners who have not given up. I have seen them watching too. Bora nodded. Yes, a few. Maybe 10 or 12 who could be trusted. We will meet more. More will come. As long as there is hope, more will come. Do-hyun looked at her. You speak of hope, but you do not know my plan. You do not know if it will work. No, Bora agreed. But you have a plan. That is more than anyone else has had in the 2 years I have been here. Something changed in Do-hyun's expression. It was small, barely visible. But Bora saw it. It was almost like respect. My name is Do-hyun, he said. Kim Do-hyun. I know. I asked around when you first arrived. She smiled slightly. I am Bora. I know. You were the only one brave enough to talk to me that first night. From that night on, things changed. Do-hyun and Bora began working together. They did it carefully, secretly, so the guards would not notice. During the day, they worked in different sections of the mine, gathering information. At night, they shared what they learned. Bora introduced Do-hyun to the other prisoners who had not given up. There was Taemin, a tall alien with 4 legs who had once been a soldier. There was Hana, a small female from a planet called Sarah who could squeeze into spaces no one else could fit. There was Minno, an old man who had been in the labor pits for 5 years and knew every secret passage and hidden corner. And there were others, slowly joining their group as word spread that something was happening. They called themselves the Quiet Ones because they operated in silence. No loud meetings, no written messages. Everything was done through small gestures, brief whispers, and careful looks. The guards never suspected anything. Do-hyun became their leader, though he never asked for the role. He just had a way of making people believe in him. Maybe it was his calmness. Maybe it was the way he thought 10 steps ahead. Maybe it was simply that he was the only one with a real plan. Plan grew more detailed every day. Do-hyun had figured out that the labor pits were connected to the main palace above through a series of tunnels and elevators. Most of these were heavily guarded. But there was one tunnel that was used only for waste removal. It was dirty and dangerous, filled with poisonous gases in some places. No one wanted to go there. Not the prisoners. Not the guards. It was forgotten, but Do-hyun had found a way to make it through the tunnel. Bora had discovered that certain plants in the mine could filter the poisonous air. If they could collect enough of these plants, they could create simple masks that would let them breathe. The tunnel led to a maintenance area beneath the palace. From there, they could access the palace's computer systems. And that was where Bora became essential. The craft think their security is perfect, she explained one night. But I have studied their systems. They have weaknesses. Old code that was never updated. Backdoors that were left open by lazy programmers. If I can get to a terminal, I can get into their network. What can you do once you are in? Do-hyun asked. Bora's eyes lit up with something that looked like revenge. Everything. I can open doors. I can disable cameras. I can shut down weapons. I can control the entire palace. Dawn nodded. This was good. Very good. But there was still one problem. They could escape the labor pits. They could take control of the palace systems. But then what? They were still on the Krath planet, surrounded by Krath soldiers. Where would they go? The answer came from an unexpected source. One day, a new prisoner arrived in the labor pits. She was human. Her name was Jiwoo, and she had been captured from a human military ship just 2 weeks ago. When Do-yoon found her, she was sitting alone in a corner of the sleeping area, her face bruised and her eyes empty. She looked broken, but Do-yoon recognized something in her. Something familiar. He sat down next to her without saying anything. "Leave me alone," Jiwoo said. Do-hyun did not move. "I said leave me alone," she repeated. "I do not want to talk." "Good," Do-yoon said. "I do not want to talk either. I just want to listen." Something in his voice made Jiwoo look up. She saw his face, calm and patient, and she felt something she had not felt since her capture. She felt safe. "They killed my crew," she said quietly. 30 people. I watched them die. Dawn nodded. He understood. "I was just a pilot," Jiwoo continued. "A nobody. They kept me alive because they wanted information about our military positions. But I did not tell them anything. So they sent me here to die." "You did not break," Do-hyun said. "It was not a question. No, I would rather die than help them." Do-hyun looked at her carefully. "What if I told you that you might not have to die? What if I told you there is a way out?" Jiwoo's eyes changed. The emptiness began to fill with something else. Hope, maybe. Or determination. "I would say you are crazy," she said. "But I would listen." And so Do-hyun told her. Not everything. Just enough. He told her about the quiet ones. About. The ship was cold. Kim Do-yoon felt the metal floor press against his knees. His hands were tied behind his back with some kind of energy rope that burned if he moved too much. Around him, he could hear the sounds of alien soldiers walking. Their boots made heavy sounds on the floor. They spoke in a language he did not understand, but he could hear them laughing. Do-yoon kept his head down. He looked at the floor. It was made of dark metal with strange patterns. He counted the patterns to keep his mind busy. 1, 2, 3, 4. He had learned this trick a long time ago. When things were bad, you count. You breathe. You wait. The transport ship shook as it moved through space. Do-hyun did not know where they were taking him. 3 days ago, he had been on a small human colony near the edge of known space. He was just a maintenance worker there. He fixed machines. He kept the water systems running. He was nobody important. But then the Krath came. The Krath were tall aliens with skin that looked like gray stone. They had 4 arms and eyes that glowed a soft yellow color. They moved fast, faster than any human could run. When their ships appeared in the sky above the colony, everyone knew it was over. The Krath did not come to talk. They came to take. Do-hyun remembered the screaming. He remembered the fires. He remembered hiding in the water treatment building while Krath soldiers searched for survivors. He had stayed quiet for 2 whole days. No food, no water. Just silence and darkness. But they found him anyway. Now he was here, on this cold ship, going somewhere he did not want to go. The ship stopped moving. Do-hyun felt the change in the engines. They had arrived somewhere. A few moments later, the door of the transport opened. Bright light came in, and Do-hyun had to close his eyes. Someone grabbed his arm and pulled him up. "Move, human," a voice said in broken human language. Do-hyun walked. He did not fight. He did not speak. He just walked where they pushed him. The place they brought him to was huge. It was some kind of palace or government building. The walls were made of that same dark metal, but there were decorations everywhere. Gold lines ran along the walls. Statues of Krath warriors stood in corners. Everything was designed to make visitors feel small, and Week thought it was working. Do-hyun felt very small. They walked through long hallways. Other Krath stopped to look at him. Some of them pointed. Some of them laughed. A human was a rare thing to see here, apparently. Do-hyun kept his eyes down and kept walking. Finally, they reached a large room. It was a throne room. Do-hyun knew this because at the far end, on a raised platform, there was a massive chair made of black stone. And sitting on that chair was the most terrifying creature Do-hyun had ever seen. Queen Vela of the Krath Empire. She was taller than the other Krath. Her gray skin was darker, almost black in some places. She wore armor that looked like it was made from the bones of her enemies. Her 4 arms rested on the sides of her throne, and her yellow eyes looked at Do-hyun like he was an insect. The soldiers pushed Do-hyun to his knees in front of the queen. He fell hard, and his knees hurt from hitting the stone floor. But he did not make a sound. He just stayed there, looking down. "So," Queen Vela said. Her voice was deep and cold. "This is a human." The room was full of Krath nobles and officers. They stood on both sides of the throne room, watching. Some of them whispered to each other. Do-hyun could feel their eyes on him. Queen Vela stood up from her throne. She was even taller when standing. She walked down the steps slowly, her 4 arms moving gracefully at her sides. Each step she took made a sound that echoed through the silent room. She stopped in front of Do-hyun and looked down at him. "Look at me, human." Do-hyun did not move. He kept his eyes on the floor. I said, "Look at me." Still, Do-hyun did not move. One of the queen's hands reached down and grabbed his chin. She forced his head up. Her grip was strong, much stronger than any human. Do-hyun had no choice but to look into her glowing yellow eyes. "Interesting," she said. "No fear in these eyes. Or perhaps you are too stupid to be afraid." The nobles in the room laughed. Queen Vela released his chin and stepped back. She walked in a circle around him, studying him from every angle like he was some kind of animal at a market. "I have heard stories about humans," she said. "Your people think you are special. You think you are strong. You spread across the stars like a disease, taking planets that do not belong to you." She stopped in front of him again. "But look at you now. On your knees, tied up like an animal. Where is your human strength now?" Do-hyun said nothing. Queen Vela waited. She seemed to expect him to speak, to beg, to do something. But Do-hyun just stayed there, silent, his face showing no emotion at all. "Nothing to say?" The queen asked. "No brave words? No threats? No promises of revenge?" Do-hyun remained silent. The queen looked annoyed now. She turned to one of her officers. "Where did you find this one?" "A small colony near the border, my queen," the officer said. "He was hiding in a water building. He did not fight when we captured him. He has not spoken since we took him. Not a single word?" "No, my queen. We tried to question him. We used pain. We used threats. He said nothing." Queen Vela turned back to look at Do-hyun. There was something different in her eyes now. Not anger. Something more like curiosity. "Are you broken, human?" she asked. "Did we break you already?" That would be disappointing. "I was told humans were stronger than this." Do-hyun did not answer. The queen bent down so her face was close to his. Her breath was cold and smelled like metal. "Or perhaps you think your silence makes you strong. Perhaps you think that if you say nothing, you win somehow." She laughed, and it was an ugly sound. "Let me tell you something, little human. Your silence means nothing to me. You are nothing to me. You are a toy, a pet, something to use until I grow bored of you. She stood back up and addressed the room. Look at this creature, she said loudly. This is what humanity sends against us. This quiet, pathetic thing. They say humans are dangerous. They say humans are survivors. But I see nothing dangerous here. I see nothing special. I see only weakness wearing a human face. The nobles laughed again. Some of them clapped their 4 hands together in approval. Queen Vela smiled. It was not a nice smile. Send him to the labor pits, she said. Let him work until he dies. Maybe hard work will teach him to speak. Guards came forward and grabbed Do-hyun's arms. They pulled him to his feet and started dragging him toward a side door. As they moved him, the nobles continued to laugh and point. But just before he was taken through the door, Do-hyun did something unexpected. He stopped. The guards tried to keep moving him, but Do-hyun had planted his feet. For just a moment, he was unmovable. The guards looked confused. This small human should not be able to resist them. Do-hyun turned his head and looked back at Queen Vela. Their eyes met, and for just 1 second, something passed between them. The queen's smile faded. She saw something in his eyes. Something she did not understand. Something that made her feel uncomfortable. Then the moment was over. The guards pulled harder, and Do-hyun let them take him. He disappeared through the door without making a sound. Queen Vela stood there for a long moment, staring at the door where the human had gone. The nobles behind her were still talking and laughing, but she was not listening to them. One of her advisors approached her. My queen, is everything all right? Vela shook her head slightly, as if waking up from a dream. Yes, she said. Everything is fine. He is just a human. Nothing to worry about. But as she walked back to her throne, she could not stop thinking about those eyes. There had been no fear in them. No anger. No hate. Just patience. Like he was waiting for something. She sat down on her throne and pushed the thought away. He was just a human. A weak, pathetic human. He would die in the labor pits like all the others. And she would forget he ever existed. But deep down, in a place she did not want to look at, Queen Vela felt something she had not felt in a very long time. She felt uncertain. The labor pits were underground. They were dark and hot and smelled like sweat and fear. This was where the Krath sent their prisoners to work, to suffer, to die. Do-hyun was taken down in a large elevator with 30 other prisoners. Most of them were aliens he had never seen before. Small creatures with many legs. Tall, thin beings with skin like paper. Creatures that looked like walking plants. All of them were afraid. He could see it in their eyes, in the way they held their bodies. When the elevator reached the bottom, guards pushed them all out into a large cavern. It was lit by orange lights that made everything look like it was on fire. In the distance, Do-hyun could see other prisoners working. They were mining something from the walls, breaking rocks, moving heavy carts. A Krath overseer approached the new arrivals. He was big, even for a Krath, and one of his arms was made of metal, a replacement for something he had lost long ago. Welcome to your new home, he said, and he laughed like it was the funniest joke in the world. I am Overseer Kang. You belong to me now. You will work when I say work. You will eat when I say eat. You will sleep when I say sleep. And when I say die, he smiled, showing sharp teeth. You will die. He walked along the line of new prisoners, looking at each one. The rules are simple. Work hard, and you might live another day. Work slow, and you will be punished. Try to escape, and you will die screaming. He stopped in front of Do-hyun. A human, he said. Interesting. Humans usually do not last long here. He had built maps of them in his mind over 6 months of planning. He knew where the guards would be, The Neth battle inside the palace was brutal and bloody. The Krath soldiers attacked in waves, pouring through the broken doors like water through a crack in a dam. They were bigger and stronger than the escaped prisoners. They had better weapons and better armor. By all logic, they should have won in minutes. But they did not. Kim Do-yoon had prepared for this. He had spent 6 months studying how the Krath fought. He knew they were confident, maybe too confident. They expected prisoners to be weak and scared. They expected easy targets. They did not expect organized resistance. The prisoners used every advantage they had. They used the narrow hallways to limit how many Krath could attack at once. They used furniture and equipment as shields and barriers. They used the flickering lights and random alarms to confuse and distract. They fought smart instead of strong, and they had something that Krath did not expect. They had nothing left to lose. Do-yoon stood at the front of the defense, firing his weapon with calm precision. Every shot counted. Every enemy that fell was one less enemy to worry about. Beside him, Taemin fought with the skill of the soldier he had once been. On his other side, Ji-woo moved with the quick reflexes of a trained pilot. Behind them, Bora worked frantically at her computer terminal. She had managed to lock down most of the palace systems, but the Krath were starting to break through her defenses. Their technicians were trying to regain control of their own network. "They're getting into my code," she shouted over the noise of battle. "I cannot hold them out much longer. How long do we have?" Do-hyun asked without stopping his fire. "Maybe 30 minutes. Maybe less. 30 minutes. Do-hyun did the math in his head. The human fleet, even at maximum speed, was at least 2 hours away. They could not hold out that long. Not against the entire Krath military, but they did not have to hold the entire palace. They just needed to hold one thing, the shield generator. The Krath palace was protected by a massive energy shield. It was what kept the palace safe from attacks from space. If Do-yoon and his group could keep control of the shield generator, they could lower the shields when the human fleet arrived. Without that, the fleet would have no way to reach them. "Fall back to the generator room," Do-hyun ordered. "Everyone, fall back now." The prisoners began to retreat, covering each other as they moved. Some of them fell. Some of them did not get up. But most of them made it to the generator room, a large space filled with humming machines and blinking lights. Do-hyun was the last one through the door. He slammed his hand against the emergency lock, and thick metal walls slid down to seal the entrance. "That will hold them for a while," he said. "But not forever." The generator room was now their fortress. It was also their prison. If the Krath got through those doors, there was nowhere else to run. Ji-woo was looking at the machines around them. "This is the shield generator?" "Yes," Bora confirmed. "If we control this, we control whether the shields are up or down. Can you make sure they stay down when the fleet arrives?" Bora nodded. "I can program it to drop the shields on a specific signal, a frequency only human ships use." "Do it." While Bora worked, Do-hyun checked on the survivors. They had started with 50 prisoners. Now they were down to 37. The others had died in the fighting. Their bodies lay in the hallways behind them, mixed with the bodies of Krath soldiers. 37 people. Against an entire empire. It was not enough. But it would have to be. Outside the generator room, the Krath were gathering. Do-hyun could hear them through the metal walls. Hundreds of soldiers, maybe thousands. They were bringing heavy weapons now, equipment designed to cut through thick metal. And then he heard a voice. A voice he recognized, human. It was Queen Vela. She was outside shouting through the door. "I know you can hear me." Do-hyun walked to the door. He pressed his hand against the metal and listened. "You have caused more trouble than I thought possible," the Queen continued. "I will admit, I underestimated you. That does not happen often." Do-yoon said nothing. But this game is over. You are trapped in a room with no escape. My soldiers will break through that door in less than an hour. And when they do, everyone inside will die. Slowly, painfully. I will make sure of it. Still, Do-yoon said nothing. Unless... The queen paused. Unless you surrender now. Open the door. Come out. And I will let the others live. I will send them back to the labor pits instead of killing them. This is my offer, human. Your life for theirs. The other prisoners had gathered behind Do-yoon, listening. Some of them looked hopeful. Maybe they could live if Do-yoon gave himself up. Maybe this did not have to end in death. But Do-yoon knew the truth. He had seen too much of the Krath to believe their promises. If he opened that door, everyone would die anyway. The queen just wanted to end this quickly, instead of waiting for her soldiers to cut through. No, he said, loud enough for the queen to hear. No? The queen sounded surprised. You would let your friends die to save yourself? I would let them fight to save themselves, Do-yoon replied. That is what humans do. We do not surrender. We do not give up. We do not quit. Then you are fools. Maybe. But we are fools who keep getting up every time we are knocked down. We are fools who keep trying, even when it is hopeless. We are fools who believe that one person can make a difference. He paused. And sometimes we are right. There was silence on the other side of the door. Then the queen laughed. It was a cold, cruel sound. Very well, human. Have it your way. I will enjoy watching you die. The cutting began. Bright sparks appeared at the edges of the door as Krath machines started burning through the metal. Do-yoon stepped back and picked up his weapon. Everyone get ready, he said. When that door falls, we fight. The prisoners spread out, taking cover behind the machines. They checked their weapons. They prepared for the end. The cutting continued. Slowly, the metal began to glow and bend. 20 minutes passed. Then Bora let out a shout. Something is happening. What? Do-yoon ran to her terminal. I am picking up signals from space. A lot of signals. Her eyes went wide. It is the human fleet. They are here. Do-yoon felt his heart jump. How is that possible? They should not have arrived for another hour. I do not know. But they are here. 50 ships. Maybe more. Bora looked up at him with tears in her eyes. They came. They actually came. In space, Commander Park Yuna watched the Krath homeworld grow larger on her screen. Around her, 50 human warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel in perfect formation. Status report, she ordered. Krath defenses are mobilizing, her tactical officer said. They have about 30 ships in orbit. More are launching from the surface. And the palace shields? Still up, Commander. Yuna nodded. She had expected that. The message had included a note about the shields. They would drop when the time was right. She just had to trust that whoever had sent that message knew what they were doing. Open a channel to the Krath fleet, she said. Broadcast on all frequencies. Channel open. Commander. Yuna stood up from her chair. This is Commander Park Yuna of the Human Defense Fleet. We have received a distress call from our people who are being held in your palace. We demand their immediate release. If you refuse, we will take them by force. A moment later, a response came. It was Queen Vela's voice. Human Commander, you have made a terrible mistake coming here. You are in the heart of the Krath Empire. You are surrounded by my fleets. You will be destroyed. Maybe, Yuna replied calmly. But we will make sure to take a lot of you with us. And even if we fail, more fleets will come. Humans do not abandon their own. We will keep coming until every last prisoner is free, or until every last Krath ship is dust. You are insane. No, we are human. That is worse. The communication ended. All ships, Yuna ordered. Prepare for battle. The space around the Krath homeworld erupted into chaos. Ships fired at each other with weapons that lit up the darkness like angry stars. Missiles flew. Shields flashed. Metal twisted and burned as ships were hit and destroyed. The human fleet was smaller, but they fought with a fury that surprised the Krath. They did not retreat when their ships were damaged. They did not run when they were outnumbered. They pushed forward, always forward, toward the palace below. "Commander, the Krath are focusing on our left flank," the tactical officer reported. "We are taking heavy losses. Tell Captain Kim to hold that position. We need to buy time." "For what?" "For the shields to drop." Back in the palace, Do-Yin heard the explosions above. The battle in space had begun, but the palace shields were still up, protecting the palace from orbital attack. As long as those shields stayed up, the human fleet could not help them. The door was almost cut through now. A large piece of metal fell inward, revealing the angry faces of Krath soldiers waiting on the other side. They would be through in minutes. "Bora," Do-Yin said, "the shields. Drop them now. But if I drop them, the palace will be vulnerable." "The Krath will. The Krath are about to break through this door and kill all of us. Drop the shields. Let the fleet in." Bora hesitated for only a second. Then she started typing. "It will take me a minute to disable the safety protocols. Once I do that, the shields will drop automatically. Hurry." More metal fell from the door. Through the gaps, Do-Yin could see Krath soldiers pushing forward. The prisoners raised their weapons. "Almost there." The day of the celebration arrived with great noise and excitement. The Krath palace was decorated with golden banners and bright lights. Soldiers in their best armor stood at every corner. Important guests arrived from all parts of the empire, their ships filling the sky like a swarm of metal insects. Queen Vela stood on her balcony and watched her guests arrive. She was wearing her finest armor, made from the bones of creatures she had killed herself. On her head sat a crown of black metal and red gems. She looked powerful. She looked terrifying. She looked like a queen. Today, she would remind everyone why she was the most feared ruler in this part of the galaxy. Below the palace. In the labor pits, Kim Do-Yin was getting ready. He had been chosen, just as Bora predicted. Early that morning, guards came to take him and a few other prisoners up to the palace. They would be displayed like animals at a show. The Queen's collection of conquered enemies. Do-Yin let the guards tie his hands. He let them push him into the elevator. He let them think he was just another broken prisoner who had given up on life. But inside his mind, every detail was clear. Every step of the plan was ready. Before he left, he had shared one last look with Bora. She had nodded slightly. She knew what to do. As soon as Do-Yin sent the signal, she and the others would begin moving through the waste tunnel. By the time anyone realized what was happening, it would be too late. The elevator rose through the rock and metal. Do-Yin could feel the change in air as they went higher. It became cleaner, fresher. The orange lights of the mines were replaced by the bright white lights of the palace. When the doors opened, Do-Yin blinked against the brightness. He was in a large room filled with soldiers and servants. They were all busy preparing for the celebration. No one paid much attention to the prisoners being led through. They walked through long hallways. Do-Yin recognized some of the paths from the maps Bora had helped him build in his mind. They passed storage rooms, guard stations, kitchens. Everything was where he expected it to be. Finally, they reached a large courtyard in the center of the palace. This was where the celebration would happen. Tables were set up with food and drinks. Krath nobles were already gathering, talking and laughing. Musicians played strange instruments that made sounds Do-Yin had never heard before. At one end of the courtyard, there was a raised platform. On the platform stood a row of cages, Inside the cages were prisoners from different worlds. Some of them looked scared. Some looked angry. Some looked like they had already given up. Do-yoon was put in one of the cages. It was small, barely big enough for him to stand. The bars were made of the same energy rope that had held his hands on the day of his capture. They burned if he touched them. He did not touch them. He just stood there, quiet and still, watching everything around him. The celebration began as the sun set. More guests arrived. Food was served. Drinks were poured. The crowd laughed and talked about their victories, their conquests, their power. They pointed at the cages and made jokes about the prisoners inside. Do-hyun ignored them. He was counting. He counted the guards. 47 in the courtyard. 12 near the cages. 23 at the entrances. The rest scattered among the guests. He counted the cameras. 16 visible, probably more hidden. They rotated every 90 seconds. He counted the time. The sun had set 32 minutes ago. In exactly 1 hour and 43 minutes, the guards would change shifts. That was when security would be weakest. He counted everything. Then Queen Vela arrived. She entered the courtyard, through a large door at the top of a staircase. Behind her walked her personal guards, the biggest and most dangerous craft soldiers in the Empire. The guests stopped, talking and bowed as she descended the stairs. Vela smiled at her guests. She waved her 4 arms in greeting. She was enjoying herself. She walked through the crowd, accepting praise and gifts from her nobles. Everyone wanted to be close to her. Everyone wanted her attention. After an hour of mingling, she finally made her way to the cages. "My guests," she announced loudly, "I present to you the greatest collection of conquered enemies in the galaxy. Here you will see creatures from 50 different worlds. All of them defeated. All of them broken. All of them proof that the Krath Empire cannot be stopped." The guests cheered and clapped. Vela walked along the row of cages, pointing at different prisoners and telling their stories. This one was a general who had fought against the Krath. This one was a scientist who had tried to create weapons. This one was a king who had refused to surrender his planet. Then she reached Do-yoon's cage. She stopped. Her yellow eyes studied him for a long moment. "And this," she said, her voice changing slightly, "is a human." The guests moved closer, curious. Humans were rare in this part of space. Many of them had never seen one before. "I captured him myself, 6 months ago," Vela continued. "He was hiding in a water building on a small colony. Like a rat." The guests laughed. "Since then, he's been in my labor pits, working, suffering, and yet..." She paused, looking at Do-yoon with an expression that was hard to read. "And yet he has never spoken a word. He has never complained. He has never begged for mercy." She stepped closer to the cage. "I have seen many prisoners in my time. Brave ones, foolish ones, broken ones. But I have never seen one quite like this. He is quiet in a way that is almost disturbing." The guests murmured among themselves. Vela reached through the bars and grabbed Do-yoon's chin, just like she had done on the first day. She forced his face toward her. "What are you hiding, little human?" she asked softly. "What goes on behind those silent eyes?" For 6 months, Do-yoon had not spoken. He had kept his silence through pain, through hunger, through exhaustion. He had waited, patient and still, for the right moment. This was the moment. "I am not hiding anything," he said. His voice was calm and clear. It echoed in the sudden silence of the courtyard. Every guest turned to look. The guards tensed, their hands moving toward their weapons. Queen Vela blinked in surprise. Then she smiled. "He speaks." Finally. She released his chin and stepped back. 6 months of silence, and now you choose to talk. Why? Because you asked. Vela laughed. "I have asked many times before. You never answered. I was waiting. Waiting? Waiting for what? Do-hyun looked at her. His eyes were steady, unafraid. For you to be curious enough to really listen. Vela's smile faded slightly. There was something in his voice that made her uncomfortable. The same feeling she had felt on the first day, when he had looked at her before being taken away. I am listening now, she said carefully. What do you have to say? Do-hyun was quiet for a moment. He looked around the courtyard, at the guards, at the guests, at the sky above. Then he looked back at the queen. You made a mistake, he said. Vela's forearms tensed. A mistake? What mistake? You thought I was weak because I was quiet. You thought I was broken because I did not fight. You thought I was nobody because I did not scream or cry or beg. You are nobody. You are a prisoner. A slave. No. Do-hyun shook his head slowly. I am not a slave. I am a soldier. Vela's eyes narrowed. A soldier? You? You were captured hiding in a water building. What? Yes, because that was my mission. The guests were completely silent now. Even the wind seemed to have stopped. Everyone was staring at the small cage where a human was saying impossible things. Your mission? Vela repeated. What mission? To be captured. To be brought here. To your palace. For a moment, Queen Vela did not understand. Then, slowly, her face changed. The confidence faded. Something new appeared. Something that looked almost like fear. That is impossible, she said. No one would let themselves be captured on purpose. No one would volunteer for the labor pits. Humans would, Do-hyun said. For the right reason, and what reason is that? Do-hyun smiled. It was a small smile, barely visible. But it was the most terrifying thing Queen Vela had ever seen. To find out everything about your palace. Your security. Your weaknesses. He paused. And to wait for the right moment. Vela stepped back from the cage. Her guards moved forward, weapons ready. Kill him, she ordered. Kill him now. The guards raised their weapons, but they never fired Dot at that exact moment. Every light in the palace went out. The courtyard was plunged into total darkness. Guests screamed. Guards shouted. Confusion spread like wildfire. Then the lights came back on, flickering and unstable. And when they did, Queen Vela saw that Do-hyun's cage was open. Empty. Find him, she screamed. Find the human. But Do-hyun was already gone. Deep beneath the palace. Bora smiled as her fingers flew across the computer terminal. She had done it. She had broken into the craft network. She had control. The plan had worked. The first thing she had done was kill the power for exactly 10 seconds. During those 10 seconds, all the electronic locks in the palace had reset, including the locks on the cages. The second thing she had done was activate the emergency protocols. All over the palace, doors were opening and closing randomly. Alarms were going off and then stopping. The guards were running in circles, not knowing what was real and what was a system error. The third thing she had done was send a message. It was a simple message, transmitted on a frequency that only human military ships could receive. It contained coordinates, a code phrase, and one word: help. Now all they had to do was survive until help arrived. Do-hyun moved through the palace like a ghost. He knew these hallways. The throne room was quiet now. The sounds of battle had faded to distant echoes. The celebrations banners hung torn and burned from the walls. Broken glass and fallen decorations covered the floor. What had started as a festival of power had ended in chaos and defeat. Queen Vela sat alone on her throne, staring at nothing. Her forearms hung limp at her sides. Her crown sat crooked on her head. Around her, the bodies of her guards lay still. Not dead, just unconscious, put to sleep by human stun weapons. The humans had won. She could not understand how it happened. Her empire was the strongest force in this part of the galaxy. Her armies had conquered 100 worlds. Her ships had destroyed fleets that dared to challenge her. And yet, one human had brought her to this. One quiet human. The door to the throne room opened. Vela looked up and saw him walking in. Kim Do-yun, the prisoner who had refused to speak. The slave who was supposed to die in the mines. The nobody who had turned out to be somebody after all. He looked different now. His clothes were still the same dirty rags he had worn in the labor pits. His face was still dirty and tired. But his shoulder had been bandaged by human medics, and his back was straight. And his eyes were clear. He walked alone into the throne room, leaving the human soldiers outside, unarmed. Vela watched him approach. Part of her wanted to attack him, to use her 4 arms to tear him apart. But she was too tired, too broken. And somewhere deep inside, she knew it was over. Do-hyun stopped at the bottom of the steps that led up to her throne. He looked up at her with those same calm, patient eyes that had disturbed her from the first moment she saw him. "Your soldiers are retreating," he said. "Your ships are destroyed or fleeing. Your palace is under human control. The prisoners are being evacuated." Vela said nothing. "You have lost." Still, Vela said nothing. What was there to say? Do-hyun took a step up the stairs. Then another. Then another. He climbed until he was standing on the platform, only a few feet from the queen of the Krath Empire. For a long moment, they just looked at each other. The hunter and the prey. The conqueror and the conquered. Except now, it was not clear which was which. "You could have killed me," Vela said finally. Her voice was quiet, almost a whisper. "When the shields dropped, when your soldiers arrived, you could have told them to storm this room and put a weapon to my head." "Yes," Do-hyun agreed. "I could have. Why did you not?" Do-hyun was quiet for a moment. He seemed to be thinking about how to answer. "Because that was never the mission," he said. "The mission." Vela laughed bitterly. "You keep talking about your mission. What mission could possibly be worth all of this? What mission makes a man let himself be captured and tortured and worked almost to death?" "The mission was to free our people," Do-hyun said simply. "Nothing more. Nothing less." Vela stared at him. "All of this, everything you did, was just to save some prisoners? Not to conquer? Not to destroy? Just to save a few hundred lives?" "Yes, that is..." She stopped, struggling to find the right word. "That is insane. Maybe." Do-hyun almost smiled. "Or maybe it is the most human thing in the universe." He turned and looked around the throne room. At the broken decorations. At the unconscious guards. At the empty spaces where nobles had stood just hours ago. "You made a mistake," he said. "Not just about me. About humans in general." "And what mistake was that?" Do-hyun turned back to face her. "You thought that because we are small, we are weak. You thought that because we do not have 4 arms or stone skin, we are easy to defeat. You thought that because I was quiet, I had nothing to say." He took one more step closer to her. "But humans are not weak. We are patient. We watch. We learn. We wait. And when the time is right, we act." His eyes were steady and calm. "You mistook quiet for weakness. But the truth is, the loudest threats are rarely the deadliest." Vela leaned back in her throne. For the first time in her long life, she truly understood what she was dealing with. This was not just a man standing in front of her. This was a species that had survived everything the universe had thrown at them. Wars, plagues, natural disasters, their own self-destruction. And they had come through it all, not by being the strongest or the fastest, but by being the most stubborn, the most patient, the most willing to sacrifice everything for the things they believed in. She had thought humans were animals to be conquered, thought she was wrong. What happens now? She asked. Now, we leave, Do-yoon said. We take our people and we go home. Your palace will be damaged but not destroyed. Your people will be hurt but not dead. This was a rescue mission, not an invasion. And me? What happens to me? Do-hyun studied her face for a long moment. That depends on you. You can rebuild. You can continue to rule your empire. You can even try to attack human worlds again, if that is what you want. He paused. But I would not recommend it. Is that a threat? No, it is a fact. He turned and started walking back toward the door. Today, we came with 50 ships to save a few hundred prisoners. If you threaten our people again, we will come with 500 ships. Or 5,000. However many it takes. He stopped at the door and looked back at her one last time. We do not want war, Queen Vela. We do not want to conquer your empire or destroy your people. We just want to live in peace and protect our own. His voice was calm, but there was steel underneath it. But if you force us to fight, we will fight. And we will not stop until we win or until there are none of us left to keep fighting. He pushed open the door. Remember that. The next time you think about attacking a human world, remember what one quiet human did to your palace. Imagine what millions of us could do. And then he was gone. Queen Vela sat alone on her throne for a long time. The sounds of human ships departing faded into silence. The palace grew quiet around her. She thought about everything that had happened. The capture. The labor pits. The celebration. The escape. The battle. And through it all, one quiet man who had never given up, never lost hope, never stopped planning. For the first time in her life, Queen Vela felt something she had never felt. Before, respect for a species she had thought was weak, respect for a man who had taught her a lesson she would never forget. The quiet ones are the most dangerous. Outside the palace, Do-hyun walked toward the waiting human dropship. Around him, freed prisoners were being loaded onto transports. Some of them were crying. Some were laughing. Some were so shocked they could barely walk. Bora found him in the crowd. Her face was covered in dirt and tears, but she was smiling. We did it, she said. We actually did it. We did, Do-hyun agreed. What happens now? Where do we go? Do-hyun looked up at the sky, where human ships were forming up for the journey home. Now we go back to our lives. You find a new home, a new job, a new purpose. He looked at her. You survived the worst thing that could ever happen to you. Everything else will be easy. Bora laughed and hugged him. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you for not giving up. Jiwoo appeared next, looking tired but happy. There you are. Commander Yuna wants to meet you. She says the man who pulled off the most impossible rescue mission in human history deserves at least a handshake. Do-hyun shook his head. It was not impossible. It was just difficult. And I did not do it alone. Still, you should come. She is waiting. They walked together to the command ship. Inside, Commander Park Yuna was waiting on the bridge. She was a tall woman with short black hair and sharp eyes. When she saw Do-hyun, she stepped forward and offered her hand. Kim Do-hyun, she said. I have read the reports. 6 months undercover in a craft labor pit. Organized a resistance network without anyone noticing. Took control of the palace systems and dropped the shields at exactly the right moment. She shook her head in amazement. How did you do it? Do-hyun thought about the question. He thought about the long nights of planning, the careful watching, the patient waiting, the moments when he had wanted to give up but forced himself to keep going. I did what humans do, he said finally. I survived. I adapted. I found a way. Yuna smiled. That is the most human answer I've ever heard. She turned to her crew. All ships, set course for home. Let us get our people back to their families. The fleet began to move, pulling away from the Krath home world. Through the windows, Dohyun watched the planet grow smaller and smaller until it was just another point of light among the stars. It was over. 6 months of silence. 6 months of suffering. 6 months of planning. And it had all worked. He had saved them. All of them. Bora came to stand next to him. What are you thinking about? I am thinking about what the Queen said. She asked me if my silence made me feel strong. He paused. I think I finally know the answer. What is it? Dohyun turned to look at her. Silence is not strength. It is patience. It is waiting for the right moment. It is knowing that sometimes the best thing you can do is nothing at all, until the time